My daughter-in-law Claire looked me right in the eyes and said something I will never forget. "New Year's is at my family's house. You're staying here alone. You can't come." That simple, that cruel. There was no apology, no gentle explanation, just that cold sentence that landed on me like a stone. We were in the living room of my house that afternoon in mid-December. I had made coffee. I had put out the chocolate chip cookies that my son Michael had always loved since he was a boy. Claire didn't even touch them. She sat on the edge of the couch with that rigid posture she always used when she visited, as if she were in a hurry to leave. Michael was next to her, silent. Staring at his phone, I held my mug between my hands and waited for him to say something, to look up, to defend me, to remember that I was his mother and that I had a right to be at family celebrations. But he didn't. He just kept staring at that screen as if his wife's words were an everyday occurrence. Claire continued speaking. She said it would be more comfortable this way, that her family was large and there wasn't enough space, that I would be better off resting in my own home. She used that word, resting, as if I were a sick old woman who needed to stay in bed, as if being 70 years old meant being dead while living. I remained silent, not because I didn't have words. I had them, plenty of them, but I knew Claire. I knew that anything I said would be used against me. I would be dramatic. I would be exaggerating. I would be the complicated mother-in-law who doesn't understand boundaries. Then Michael spoke. He finally looked up from his phone and looked at me, not with affection, not with guilt, with annoyance, as if I were the problem, as if my simple existence were a burden. "Mom, it's better this way. If you came, you'd just embarrass us. You know how you are at gatherings, always so quiet, so serious. Claire's family is different. They're cheerful, modern. You don't fit in there." Those words pierced my chest. You don't fit in. My own son telling me I didn't fit into his life, that my presence was an embarrassment, that it was better for me to stay alone in my house while they celebrated the start of a new year surrounded by laughter and toasts. I swallowed hard. I nodded slightly. I wasn't going to cry in front of them. I wouldn't give them that satisfaction. Claire smiled. A small, almost imperceptible smile, but I saw it. It was a smile of victory. She had gotten what she wanted, to push me away, to erase me, to turn me into an uncomfortable memory stored in a drawer. They left shortly after. Michael didn't hug me. Claire didn't say a warm goodbye either, just a dry bye from the door. I stayed sitting in that empty living room with the untouched cookies on the table and the echo of those words bouncing in my head. "You'd just embarrass us." I closed my eyes. I took a deep breath, and in that heavy silence, in that loneliness I already knew so well, something inside me broke. But it wasn't a break of pain, it was something else. It was the breaking of chains, of expectations, of the need to be accepted by people who clearly didn't value me. But before I tell you what I did, I need you to know something. 3 weeks after that conversation, when I was already far from here, living something I never imagined, my phone exploded. Over 80 messages, all from my son, all from Claire, all desperate, all with the same questions. "Mom, where are you? Who is that man in your pictures? Why didn't you tell us anything? What are you doing?" Because I didn't argue. I didn't beg. I didn't cry asking them to let me go to that New Year's dinner. I simply made a decision. I bought a ticket. I packed my things. And I left. And when they saw what I was doing, when they saw who I was with, when they realized that I didn't need them to be happy, then they wanted to talk. Then they looked for me. But it was too late. Let me tell you how I got to that moment. How a 70-year-old woman who had spent her entire life serving others finally decided to live for herself. And how that decision changed everything. That night I didn't sleep. I stayed awake thinking, remembering. My husband Arthur had died 5 years ago, a sudden heart attack that didn't even give him time to say goodbye. Since then, I had lived alone in this house that was once brimming with life and now only held silence. Michael was my only son, the center of my world. I had given him everything, my youth, my energy, my dreams. I worked double shifts for years, so he could go to a big state university. I gave up trips, new clothes, and little luxuries so he could have the best. And when he married Claire 8 years ago, I tried to be the perfect mother-in-law, the one who doesn't meddle, the one who doesn't give opinions, the one who is only available when needed. But it was never enough. Claire always saw me as a threat, as competition. From the beginning, she tried to push me away from Michael. First, it was subtle comments, that I called too much, that I was too attached, that I needed to learn to let go. Then it became concrete actions. They changed plans without telling me. They canceled visits at the last minute. They excluded me from important family decisions. And Michael just let it happen. He chose the peace of his marriage over respect for his mother. I tolerated it all. I thought that with time, things would get better, that Claire would realize I wasn't her enemy, that Michael would remember everything I had done for him, but it didn't happen. Every year it got worse. Every celebration was a new humiliation. And now this, New Year's, the night that marks a new beginning, and they were telling me I had no place in that beginning. I got out of bed around 3 o'clock in the morning. I went to the kitchen. I made tea. I sat by the window and looked at the empty street. The neighbors' Christmas lights twinkled in the darkness. I thought about all the times I had swallowed my pride, all the times I had smiled when I wanted to scream, all the times I had accepted crumbs of affection as if they were feasts. And I asked myself why. Why did I keep allowing it? Why did I keep expecting them to treat me with dignity when they had proven 1,000 times they wouldn't? Then, I made a decision. I wasn't going to beg. I wasn't going to call Michael crying to get him to change his mind. I wasn't going to humiliate myself, asking for a place at a table where I clearly wasn't wanted. I was simply going to do something for myself, something I hadn't done in a long time, something that would give me back even a little bit of the life I had sacrificed for others. The next morning, I opened my computer. I searched for flights. I searched for hotels. I searched for possibilities. And I found something perfect. A trip I had always dreamed of taking, but had always postponed. Arthur and I had planned to go together when he retired, but death came first. And I had stored that dream away like you store broken things that hurt too much to look at. Now I was taking it out again. I was dusting it off. And this time, I was going to follow through. Alone. Without asking permission, without giving explanations. I bought the ticket. I paid with my savings. That $1,200 I had saved for years, just in case. Just in case Michael needed it. Just in case there was an emergency. But this was an emergency. The emergency of a woman who was disappearing and needed to remember she still existed. I booked the hotel, 5 nights, New Year's included. I started packing clothes in secret, things I hadn't worn in years, a dress Arthur had given me that I kept like a relic, comfortable but elegant shoes, my old camera, and a strange feeling in my chest that I didn't know if it was fear or excitement. I didn't tell Michael anything. I didn't tell anyone. I just continued my normal routine. When he called to ask how I was, I said I was fine. When Claire sent short texts, I replied with 1 or 2 words. They didn't notice anything different. They never noticed anything about me. The days passed slowly after that afternoon in my living room. Every morning I woke up with the weight of those words still fresh in my chest. "You just embarrass us. You don't fit in there." I would get out of bed and look at my reflection in the bathroom mirror. A 70-year-old woman looked back at me. Gray hair I no longer tried to hide. Wrinkles that told stories no one wanted to hear. Hands that had worked so hard and received so little in return. My name is Helen Porter. I was born 70 years ago in a small town where everyone knew each other and doors were never locked. I married young, to Arthur, a good man who worked in construction and who loved me with that kind of quiet love that doesn't need words to prove itself. We had Michael when I was 25. It was a difficult pregnancy. The doctor said we couldn't have any more children after him, so Michael became my everything. Arthur died 5 years ago. It was an ordinary Tuesday. He had gone out to pick up bread for breakfast. I was at home making coffee. He never came back. The heart attack got him on the street. Neighbors called an ambulance, but it was too late. They called me to the hospital to identify the body. I remember I didn't cry in that moment. I just stood there looking at him, thinking he looked at peace, as if he could finally rest after so many years of hard work. After the funeral, Michael told me I could move in with him and Claire, that I didn't have to stay alone in this house full of memories. I thanked him, but I said no. This house was the only thing I had left of Arthur. Every corner held something of him. The armchair where he sat to watch the football game. The table where we ate breakfast together every Sunday. The garden he tended with so much care. I couldn't leave it. It would be like betraying him twice. First by dying, then by forgetting. So I stayed. Alone. In this 3-bedroom house that now felt too big for one person. At first, Michael came by often. Every week. Sometimes twice a week. He brought food. We sat and talked. He told me about his job as an accountant at a tech company. He told me about his plans. His dreams. I listened to him with that attention only a mother can give. That attention that holds on to every word as if it were a treasure. But then he met Claire. It was at a work conference. She was an executive assistant at another company. Young, pretty, sure of herself. Michael fell in love fast. He introduced me to her 3 months after they started dating. I tried to be nice. I prepared a special dinner. I used the good china I only brought out for important occasions. Claire arrived in high heels and a dress that probably cost more than my monthly rent. During dinner, she talked a lot about herself, her career, her ambitions, the places she had traveled. I listened and tried to ask questions to show interest. But I felt something strange, a coldness in the way she looked at me, as if I were an obstacle she would eventually have to overcome. Michael didn't notice anything. He was too busy looking at her, with those eyes of a man in love who sees perfection where there are flaws. They got married a year later. I paid for part of the wedding, $3,000 from my savings. It was money Arthur and I had saved for our old age. But Michael was my son, and a mother doesn't skimp when it comes to her son's happiness. Or so I thought at the time. The wedding was beautiful, large, with over 200 guests. Claire's family took up most of the room. Elegant people talking about business and vacations in Europe. I sat at my table feeling out of place in my simple dress and comfortable shoes. During the party, Claire barely spoke to me. She was busy attending to her guests, posing for photos, laughing with her friends. Michael didn't come over much either. He just came to greet me quickly before the ceremony and then during the toast. The rest of the time he was with her. As it should be, I told myself. It's their day, their new life. I'm just a chapter from the past. After the wedding, the visits became less frequent. Michael would call, but the conversations were short. "How are you, Mom?" "Fine, son. Everything's fine." "Okay, great. We'll see you soon." Hang up. Soon turned into weeks. Weeks into months. I didn't want to be the nagging mother, so I didn't call too much. I waited for him to make the first move. Sometimes he did. Sometimes he didn't. Claire began to show her true colors slowly. At first, it was small comments. "Helen, don't you think you call Michael too much? He has a lot of work. He needs to concentrate." Or when I prepared food to bring them. "Helen, Michael is on a diet. He can't eat these heavy things." I would nod, apologize, try to adapt to what she wanted. But it was never enough. Then came the exclusions. A birthday for Michael that I found out about 2 days before. A family dinner they forgot to tell me about. Christmases where they told me they would come visit but canceled at the last minute because something came up with Claire's family. I swallowed the pain. I smiled. I said it was no problem, that I understood. But inside, something was dying. A part of me that had believed a mother's love was unbreakable was crumbling. I tried to talk to Michael once. It was 2 years ago. I told him I felt forgotten, that I needed to see him more often, that I missed having a close relationship with him. Michael sighed. He told me I needed to understand that he had his own life now, that he wasn't a kid anymore, that Claire was his priority, that I should learn to let go, as if a son were something you just release and forget. Since then, I stopped complaining. I became invisible. The mother who is there when needed but disappears when she's not, the one who answers texts with 1 or 2 words, the one who asks for nothing, the one who expects nothing, because expecting only brings disappointment. And I had already had enough disappointment for a lifetime. I lived alone in this house, surrounded by silence. My days were all the same. I got up early, even though I had nothing to do. I made breakfast for one person. I watched the news. I cleaned rooms that were already clean. I watered plants that Arthur had planted and that I kept alive as a tribute to his memory. I went for walks in the neighborhood. I greeted neighbors who knew me less and less as people moved out and new people arrived who didn't know who I was. In the afternoons, I sometimes went to the grocery store just to be around people, to hear voices, to feel like I was still part of the world. I bought things I didn't need: a can of peaches, a package of cookies, a magazine I would never read. I paid at the checkout and the cashier didn't even look me in the eye. Just scanned the products, said the total, took my money. Next customer. I'd get home and put away the groceries, make dinner, eat in front of the television, watching shows that didn't interest me but filled the silence. I washed the dishes. I showered. I put on my nightgown. I got into bed. I stared at the ceiling. And I wondered if this was all that was left. If this loneliness was my destiny until the day I died. The weekends were worse. I watched from the window as families went out together, parents with children, grandmothers with grandchildren, laughter, hugs, life. I didn't have grandchildren. Michael and Claire had decided not to have children. Too expensive, they said. Too much responsibility. They wanted to travel, enjoy their money, live without ties. I never told them how much that decision hurt me. I never told them I dreamed of being a grandmother, of having someone small to care for and love, someone who truly needed me. That's how 5 years passed. From Arthur's death to that day in December when Claire told me I couldn't go to the New Year's dinner. 5 years of existing without really living, of waiting for crumbs of attention, of settling for 5-minute phone calls, of pretending I was fine when inside I was fading away. After that afternoon when Claire told me I wasn't welcome at New Year's, I tried to go on with my life as if nothing had happened. But something had changed inside me. Every time I looked at the phone, waiting for a call from Michael that never came, I felt that emptiness growing larger. Every time I cooked, thinking of bringing something to my son, and then remembered that Claire would probably throw it in the trash, I felt smaller. A week after that conversation, I received a text from Michael. Brief, emotionless. Mom, we need you to watch the house this weekend. We're going out of town. We have the extra keys. We'll drop them off tomorrow. Just like that. Not asking if I had plans, not asking if I could do it, simply assuming I had nothing better to do than be available for them. I replied yes. Of course, yes, because that's what I always did. Said yes, was available, was useful, even if it hurt me. They arrived the next afternoon. Claire didn't even get out of the car. She just stared at her phone in the passenger seat. Michael came in quickly with the keys in his hand. He left a list on the kitchen table, detailed instructions. Water the plants on Tuesdays and Fridays. Collect the mail every day. Don't touch the thermostat. Don't use the master bedroom. Basically, treating me like a cleaning lady. How are you, Mom? He asked, as he was already heading for the door. He didn't wait for an answer. Fine, son, I said to the empty air. We'll see you Sunday night. Don't be late because we have to leave early Monday. And he left, just that fast. Not a hug, not a real conversation. Just orders and rushing. That night, I went to their house. A nice house in a residential neighborhood they had bought 3 years ago. Arthur and I helped them with the down payment. $5,000 that we took from our savings because Michael said it was a great opportunity and they couldn't pass it up. They never paid us back that money. We never talked about it. I went in with the keys Michael had given me. The house was immaculate. Everything in its place. Modern furniture. Minimalist decor, no family photos, nothing to show that Michael had a mother or ever had a father, just photos of the two of them on trips, in elegant restaurants, on paradise beaches, perfect lives in perfect frames. I watered the plants as they had asked. I collected the mail. I sat for a moment in the living room, feeling the coldness of that place. There was no warmth, no soul. It was a house from a magazine. Pretty but empty, like my relationship with my son, Pretty on the outside, dead on the inside. I went back to my house with a lump in my throat. I made tea. I sat in my armchair, the same one Arthur used to sit in, and I cried. I cried for the first time in a long time. Not dramatic sobs, just silent tears that fell without permission. Tears for the lost years, for the son I raised who is now a stranger, for the loneliness that had become my only faithful companion. The following days were the same. I went to Michael's house, did my chores, returned to mine, and every time I entered that place, so perfect and so cold, I wondered what had happened to the boy who hugged me when he had nightmares, the boy who told me I was the best mom in the world, the boy who promised he would always take care of me when he grew up. On Sunday night, they returned. I called Michael to let him know everything was in order. "Thanks, Mom. We'll swing by tomorrow to pick up the keys." And he hung up. He didn't even ask how my weekend was. Didn't even offer to stop by and visit for 5 minutes. Just thanks and goodbye. They didn't come on Monday. Not on Tuesday either. On Wednesday, I got a text. "Mom, can you just leave the keys in the mailbox? We don't have time to stop by. Thanks." I stared at that message for a long time. They didn't even have time to spend 5 minutes picking up keys. Not even that. I walked to their house. I left the keys in the mailbox, as they had asked, and I stood there in front of that closed door, feeling like I had just closed something more than a mailbox. December arrived, and with it, the Christmas holidays. That time of year that used to fill me with joy, and now only reminded me how alone I was. I saw the decorations in the stores, the lights on the streets, families buying gifts together, and I had no one to buy anything for. Well, I had Michael. But what was the point of buying a gift for someone who barely had time to say hello to me? Anyway, I went to the store. I looked for something for him, a nice shirt that cost $120. Money I could barely afford to spend, but I spent it anyway because that's what mothers do. They sacrifice, always. For Claire, I bought a silk scarf, $80. Not because I liked her, but because I didn't want to give her reasons to say I was cheap or thoughtless. I called Michael to ask when we could see each other to exchange gifts. There was silence on the other end. Then a sigh. "Mom, we're going to be really busy this year. Claire's family has a lot of gatherings. What if we just leave it for after New Year's?" After New Year's, after the holidays, after what was important, I was always after. "That's fine, son," I replied, as always, without complaining, without arguing, just swallowing the pain and pretending it didn't affect me. Christmas passed. Alone. I made a small dinner for myself. I put on Christmas music that only made the silence more obvious. I looked at old photos of when Michael was a child, his bright eyes opening gifts, his laughter filling the house. Arthur by my side, smiling, proud of the family we had built. All of that felt like another life, like a dream I had woken up from, to find myself in this silent nightmare. 2 days later, I received a text from Claire. It was strange. She almost never texted me directly. I opened the message with curiosity. "Helen, just letting you know we're spending New Year's at my parents' house. It's all arranged. It's an important family tradition. Hope you understand." I read that message 3 times. Hope you understand. As if she were doing me a favor by letting me know. As if I should be grateful they at least informed me. She didn't mention anything about inviting me. Nothing about asking if I had plans. Nothing about considering that I was also family. I replied, "Just one. I understand. Thanks for letting me know." But I didn't understand. I didn't understand how my son had come to this. I didn't understand how the love I gave him his entire life could mean so little to him now. I didn't understand how a daughter-in-law could have so much power over a son that he forgot his own mother. The next day, Michael came to my house. Unannounced. He came in with an uncomfortable expression. Claire stayed in the car, as usual. He sat on the edge of the couch without taking off his coat, a sign he didn't plan to stay long. "Mom, I came to talk to you about New Year's. Claire already told you we're going to be with her family. It's important to her. Her parents organize this every year, and they expect us to be there." "And what about me?" I asked. My voice sounded smaller than I wanted. Am I not important? Mom, don't start. You'll be fine here. You can watch TV, rest. You don't need to go everywhere with us. You don't need to. As if my presence were optional. As if I were an accessory that could be left in a drawer when not needed. Michael, I am your family too. I also deserve to spend the holidays with you. He stood up. The discomfort on his face turned to annoyance. Mom, the truth is, if you came, you'd just embarrass us. You know how you are. So quiet, so serious. Claire's family is different. They're cheerful, modern. You don't fit in there. It's better if you stay home. Those words again. You'd just embarrass us. You don't fit in. The same ones Claire had used. The same ones now coming from my son's mouth. My own son telling me I was an embarrassment, that I wasn't good enough to be in his life. I sat on that couch after Michael left. I didn't move for hours. I just sat there staring at the door he had walked out of without even saying goodbye. The words kept bouncing in my head. You just embarrass us. You don't fit in. My own son had confirmed what Claire thought of me. That I was a problem, a burden, something to be gotten rid of. The house was silent. That heavy silence I knew so well. The wall clock struck 6 o'clock in the evening. It was starting to get dark outside. The neighbors' Christmas lights turned on, one by one. Families gathering for dinner, children playing, laughter drifting, muffled, through the windows. And me here, alone, always alone. I finally got up. I went to the kitchen. I opened the refrigerator, not knowing what I was looking for. There was food I had prepared days ago that no one but me would eat. A stew that Michael used to like when he was a boy. I thought about taking it to him, but I already knew what would happen. Claire would say it was too heavy, that they were watching what they ate, that it was better not, and it would end up in the trash or back in my fridge, another reminder that my efforts were useless. I closed the refrigerator. I wasn't hungry. I went to my bedroom. I sat on the bed I had shared with Arthur for 42 years. I ran my hand over his side of the bed. I could still feel his absence like a physical hole. If he were here, none of this would be happening. Arthur would never have allowed Michael to treat me like this. He would have talked to him. He would have made him understand that you don't discard a mother like old furniture. But Arthur wasn't here, and I was facing this alone. Alone. Trying to understand at what point I lost my son. At what point he stopped being the boy who needed me and became this man who saw me as a burden. I thought of all the moments I swallowed my words. All the times I accepted crumbs when I deserved a feast. I remembered when Michael turned 40 years old. Claire organized a big party at an elegant restaurant. They told me 3 days before. I bought an expensive gift. A watch that cost me $400. Money I didn't have but took from my savings because it was an important birthday. I arrived at the restaurant and sat at a table in the back. Claire's family occupied the main tables. All well-dressed, talking loudly, laughing. I was alone at my table like a second-class guest. Michael came by to greet me quickly. He opened my gift without much enthusiasm, said thanks, and went off to attend to the other guests. I spent the whole night watching from afar as my son celebrated, surrounded by people who didn't know him like I did, people who hadn't sacrificed anything for him, and I realized I was no longer important in his life. I was just an obligation, someone who had to be invited out of duty. Or the time I got sick 2 years ago, a nasty flu that left me in bed for a week. I called Michael to let him know, to ask if he could stop by, even for a moment. He said he was very busy but would send me some medicine through a delivery service. Sure enough, a box of medicine arrived the next day. No note, no personal message, just the medicine, and a $35 bill that I had to pay. I spent that whole week alone with a fever, dragging myself out of bed to make tea, dragging myself to the bathroom, lying, shivering under the covers, and thinking that if I died right there, no one would notice for days. Maybe weeks, because no one came to see me. No one really worried about me. When I recovered, Michael called. "Are you better, Mom?" "Yes, son. Good. Well, I'll let you go. I have a meeting." And he hung up. He didn't even ask if I needed anything, if I had eaten well, if it had been serious. He just verified that I was no longer a problem he had to worry about. All those memories hit me harder now, because I couldn't lie to myself anymore. I couldn't keep telling myself that things would get better, that Michael would eventually remember who raised him, that Claire would accept me over time. None of that was going to happen. This was all I was going to get. Indifference, forgetfulness, rejection. I went to bed that night but couldn't sleep. I tossed and turned for hours, thinking, feeling that pain in my chest that wasn't physical but hurt more than any illness. It was the pain of knowing I didn't matter, that I had dedicated my entire life to raising a son who now saw me as an inconvenience. At 4 o'clock in the morning, I got up. I went to the living room. I turned on a lamp. I took out the old photo boxes I kept in the closet, photos of when Michael was a baby, his first day of school, his graduation, his wedding. In all those photos I was there, smiling, proud, happy, believing I was building something permanent, something that would last forever. But looking at those photos now, I realized something. I was always on the side, never in the center, always on the periphery, as if even then I already knew my place was secondary, that I existed to serve, to be available, but not to be truly seen. I put the photos away. I made coffee even though it was too early. I sat by the window, watching the sunrise, the sky turning from black to gray to that pink hue that announces the day. And I made a decision. I wasn't going to continue like this. I wasn't going to spend the rest of my life waiting for my son to give me scraps of his attention. I wasn't going to spend New Year's alone in this house, crying over a love that was clearly one-sided. I opened my computer. I already had the ticket purchased from days before, but I hadn't done anything else. I hadn't packed. I hadn't really planned. It was as if a part of me was still hoping Michael would change his mind, that he would call, saying it was all a mistake, that of course I was invited, that they needed me there. But that wasn't going to happen, and it was time to accept it. I reviewed my reservation. A hotel on the coast. 5 nights. From December 28th to January 2nd. New Year's in a completely different place. Far from this house. Far from the memories. Far from the life that had swallowed me whole without giving me anything in return. The trip cost a total of $1,800. Flight, hotel, meals. It was almost everything I had left in my savings. Money I had saved for emergencies, to help Michael if he needed it, for my funeral eventually. But what was the point of saving money for a son who didn't value me? What was the point of saving for a future where I would probably die alone anyway? I confirmed everything. I printed the tickets. I got my old suitcase out of the closet, the same one Arthur and I traveled with on our 30th anniversary. I hadn't used it in years. Years since I'd gone anywhere other than the grocery store or the doctor's office. I started packing. Clothes I hadn't worn in a long time. A wine-colored dress Arthur had bought me, which I'd saved because it seemed too elegant for my everyday life. Too elegant for what? To be alone in my house? For no one to see me? It was ridiculous. I packed it. Pretty shoes I had left in the back of the closet. A soft shawl my mother gave me before she died. My sunglasses. My old camera. I wanted to capture this moment, this rebirth, because that's what it felt like, as if I were about to be born again. I didn't tell Michael anything. I didn't let him know. I knew exactly what would happen if I told him. He would ask me why. He would question me. Claire would say I was exaggerating, that I was being dramatic, that at my age I should be at home resting instead of doing crazy things. So I decided not to say anything, just leave, disappear, let them have their perfect New Year's without me, and I would have mine, the way I wanted. The days before the trip passed, strangely slowly and quickly at the same time. Every morning I woke up with that mix of excitement and fear I hadn't felt in years. Excitement because I was finally doing something for myself. Fear because I didn't know if I had the courage to see it through. A part of me was still hoping Michael would call, that he would say he had reconsidered, that, of course, I should be with them for New Year's. But he didn't call. The days passed, and my phone remained silent. No texts, no calls, nothing. It was as if they had already erased me from their lives. As if the fact that I wasn't going to be at their celebration meant I simply ceased to exist. I continued packing slowly. Each item I put in that suitcase was a decision, a declaration. I was choosing to leave. I was choosing not to stay, waiting like a faithful dog for its owner to return. I folded the wine-colored dress carefully. It was a beautiful dress. Arthur bought it for me for our 35th anniversary. He told me I looked radiant in it, that I looked like a queen. I never wore it again after he died. It seemed too beautiful for the gray life I was living, but now I was going to wear it. I was going to wear it, and I was going to feel beautiful again, even if it was just for a few days. Even if no one else noticed, I would notice, and that was enough. On December 26th, Michael sent a text. Short, emotionless. Mom, we'll stop by tomorrow afternoon to wish you a late Merry Christmas. We have a gift for you. I read that message several times. We'll stop by tomorrow, not asking if I was available, not asking if I had plans, just assuming I would be there, waiting for them, as always, because that's what I always did. Waited. Was available. Was convenient. I replied, I won't be here tomorrow. I have plans. The response came almost immediately. Plans? What plans? I felt something strange reading that. Surprise in his words. As if it were impossible for me to have plans. As if my life were so empty that the idea of me doing something on my own was absurd. I'm going out, I replied. I'll be busy. There was silence. Then, where are you going? I didn't answer. I left the message on read. I turned off my phone. I didn't owe them explanations. Not after how they had treated me. Not after they made it clear I wasn't welcome in their lives. That night, I slept better than I had in months. As if my body finally understood that something was changing, that I was taking control, that I was no longer going to be the invisible woman who existed only to serve others. On December 27th, I woke up early. I showered. I dressed in comfortable clothes for the trip. I checked my suitcase one last time. Passport, tickets, money, medicine. Everything was ready. I called a cab to take me to the airport. The flight left at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. At 11 o'clock in the morning, there was a knock on the door. It was Michael, with Claire, both with confused faces. I opened the door, but didn't invite them in. Mom, what's going on? Michael pointed to the suitcase by the door. Where are you going? On a trip, I replied. Calmly, without emotion, as if it were the most normal thing in the world. A trip? Where? With whom? Claire's voice was sharp, accusatory, as if I had committed a crime. To the coast. Alone. Alone? Michael pushed past me into the house. He looked around as if looking for evidence that I was lying. Mom, you can't travel alone. You're not at an age for that stuff. I'm 70 years old, not 90. I can still do what I want. Claire crossed her arms. This is ridiculous. Helen, why are you doing this? Is it for attention? I felt something hot rising in my chest. Anger, fury, years of swallowing words and feelings that now wanted to come out, but I held back. I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of seeing me explode. I wasn't going to give them reasons to say I was dramatic or exaggerating. I'm not doing this for you, I'm doing this for me. You made it very clear that I'm not welcome at your New Year's, so I decided to have my own somewhere else. Mom, don't be like that. Michael tried to take a conciliatory tone. It's not that you're not welcome. We just said it would be more comfortable if you stayed here. You said I would embarrass you, that I don't fit in, remember? There was silence. Michael looked at the floor. Claire pressed her lips together. Neither of them denied my words because they both knew it was true. I didn't ask for permission to have a life. I don't need your approval to do something for myself. You have your plans. I have mine. It's that simple. But it's dangerous, Claire said again, with that condescending tone I hated so much. What are you going to do alone in a hotel? What if something happens to you? If something happens to me here alone in my house, you wouldn't notice for days either. At least there, I'll be in a new place, seeing new things, living. That left them speechless, because it was true. I could die here, and no one would come looking for me until I started to smell or until the neighbors noticed I hadn't taken the trash out in weeks. My death would be as invisible as my life. The cab arrived. It honked outside. I grabbed my suitcase. I grabbed my purse, and I walked toward the door. "Mom, wait." Michael grabbed my arm. Not forcefully, more like a desperate gesture. "Don't do this. Come with us to Claire's parents' house. We can fix it. Now I'm welcome? Now I fit in? Or are you only inviting me because you feel guilty?" He didn't answer, because we both knew the answer. They were inviting me out of obligation, because it would look bad if I left alone, not because they actually wanted me there. I pulled my arm away. "Thank you for the offer, but I've already made my decision. Enjoy your New Year's. I'm going to enjoy mine." I left the house. I got in the cab. As we drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Michael and Claire were standing in the doorway, confused, bewildered, probably wondering what had happened, how their submissive, obedient mother had suddenly grown a spine. On the way to the airport, my phone started ringing. Michael. Once, twice, 3 times. I didn't answer. Then the text came. "Mom, pick up. We need to talk. This isn't right. You can't just leave like this." Each message made me feel stronger, more certain of my decision, because now they wanted to talk. Now it was important, but only because I had done something they didn't expect. Only because I was suddenly no longer predictable, no longer convenient. I got to the airport. I checked in. I went through security. I sat at the gate, watching the planes take off. And I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Freedom. The freedom of not having to answer to anyone, of not having to explain myself, of not having to beg for affection from people who clearly didn't value me. The flight lasted 3 hours. I sat by the window. I watched the clouds. I watched the infinite sky. And I thought about Arthur, how proud he would be of me right now. He always told me I was stronger than I thought, that I had a fiery spirit that just needed permission to shine. I had spent so many years putting out that fire, making myself small, being what others needed me to be. But now that fire was coming back, and it was burning brighter than ever. The plane landed at 5 o'clock in the evening. When I left the airport, the air was different, warmer, with that smell of salt that the sea brings. I took a cab to the hotel. During the ride, I looked out the window, seeing palm trees and colorful houses, people walking calmly through the streets, couples holding hands, families eating ice cream. Life. So much life around me. The hotel was modest but clean. A 2-story building painted coral with balconies overlooking the beach. The receptionist greeted me with a genuine smile. "Welcome, Mrs. Porter. We hope you enjoy your stay." She handed me the key to room 208, 2nd floor, ocean view. I went up the stairs slowly. My right knee protested a bit. Years of working on my feet were taking their toll. But I didn't care. I opened the door to my room, and the first thing I saw was the balcony. I dropped my suitcase. I opened the glass doors. And there it was. The ocean. Immense. Shining under the afternoon sunday, the waves breaking gently against the sand. The constant sound of the water immediately brought me peace. I stood there for a long time, just looking, just breathing, thinking about how many years had passed since the last time I saw the sea. Arthur and I came once, 15 years ago. It was a short trip, 3 days. He was so happy. We played in the sand like children. We ate fresh fish. We walked along the shore holding hands. They were perfect days, the kind you keep in your heart forever. Now I was here again, but without him, and without my son, completely alone. But strangely, I didn't feel sad. I felt free, as if I had left behind a heavy burden I had been carrying for years. I unpacked slowly. I hung my clothes in the small closet. I took out my wine-colored dress and hung it up carefully. I was going to wear it on New Year's Eve, to celebrate my new life, my new version, the Helen who no longer waited for crumbs, the Helen who dared to live. That night, I went for a walk on the beach. The sun was setting, painting the sky orange and pink. There were few people, a young couple taking photos, a man running with his dog, children building last-minute sandcastles before their parents called them in for dinner. I took off my shoes. I felt the sand between my toes. I walked along the shore, letting the cool water touch my feet. I didn't take out my phone. I didn't take pictures. I just lived the moment. I breathed. I listened. I felt. It was enough. For the first time in a long time, just feeling was enough. I had dinner at a small restaurant on the beach. I ordered grilled fish with rice and salad. The waiter was a young man who called me ma'am and treated me with genuine respect. Not that forced kindness given to the elderly out of pity, but real respect. We chatted a bit. He asked where I was from, what brought me here. I told him I was on vacation, celebrating life. He smiled. That's wonderful, ma'am. We should all celebrate life more often. I returned to the hotel around 9 o'clock. My phone had 17 missed calls, all from Michael. 10 messages. I didn't open them. Not yet. I needed these days for myself. Without interruptions, without explanations, without having to justify my right to exist. I put on my nightgown. I went out to the balcony. I sat in the plastic chair that was there. I looked at the stars. I listened to the sound of the sea. And for the first time in 5 years, since Arthur's death, I felt at peace, truly at peace. The next morning, I woke up early. The years of getting up at dawn don't just go away, but this time I didn't get up out of obligation. I got up because I wanted to see the sunrise from the balcony. And it was beautiful. The sky changing from black to purple to pink to gold. The sun emerging slowly from the horizon. A new day, a new beginning. I went down for breakfast. The hotel's dining room was small and cozy. There were wooden tables with white tablecloths, a simple buffet with fruit, bread, eggs, coffee. I served myself slowly. I sat alone at a table by the window. That's when I saw him. An older man sitting at a corner table, reading the newspaper, drinking coffee. There was something familiar about him. In the way he held his cup, in his relaxed posture. I kept looking at him, trying to place where I knew him from. Then he looked up. Our eyes met. And we both froze. Edward Lopez, my high school classmate, the boy who sat behind me in math class, the one who lent me his notes when I was absent, the one who once told me I had the prettiest smile in the class. That was over 50 years ago. A whole lifetime ago. He stood up. He walked over to my table. With that smile, I recognized immediately, despite the wrinkles and gray hair. Helen? Helen Porter? I nodded, unable to speak. He laughed. A warm, genuine laugh. My goodness, I can't believe it. What are you doing here? Vacation, I finally managed to say. And you? The same. I come here every year around this time. Ever since my wife died 3 years ago, I needed a place to process everything, and this place gave me peace. He sat down without asking permission. As if the 50 years we hadn't seen each other didn't exist, we started talking. Cautiously at first, filling in the gaps of decades. He told me he had married young, had 2 daughters, worked as an engineer his whole life. His wife died of cancer. It was a long, painful process. After her death, he didn't know what to do with all the silence, so he started traveling, looking for places where he could breathe without feeling the weight of her absence. I told him my story, Arthur, Michael, the loneliness, the exclusion, the words that had pushed me to take this flight. Edward listened without interrupting, without judging, just listening with that complete attention I hadn't received from anyone in so long. When I finished speaking, he put his hand over mine. A simple gesture, but it made me feel seen. Understood. Helen, you did the right thing by coming. No one should spend the holidays feeling unwanted, and no one should ever have to beg for love from their own family. We talked for hours. The dining room emptied. The staff began clearing tables. And we were still there, talking, laughing, remembering stories from our youth, sharing the pains of old age. It was strange. So many years had passed, and yet the conversation flowed as if we had never been apart. Do you have plans for today? He finally asked. None. Just walk on the beach. Maybe read a little. Would you like to walk together? I know a local craft market nearby, and a little restaurant that makes the best ceviche you've ever tasted. I hesitated for a moment. A part of me still carried that guilt, that voice saying I shouldn't be enjoying myself while my son was upset. But then, I remembered why I was here. Because I deserved to live. Because I deserved to be happy. Because I had spent too much time sacrificing myself for someone who didn't value me. I'd love that, I replied. We spent the day together. We walked through the market, looking at colorful crafts. Edward bought me a silver bracelet with turquoise stones, he insisted, despite my protests. So you remember this day, he said. We ate ceviche that was indeed the best I had ever tasted. We sat on a terrace overlooking the sea, talking about everything and nothing. Old dreams, regrets, second chances. In the afternoon, we returned to the hotel. We said goodbye in the lobby. Breakfast again tomorrow? He asked. Of course, I replied, and I realized I was smiling. A real smile, the kind that comes from the soul. The following days passed like a dream. Every morning I had breakfast with Edward. We talked for hours about deep things and simple things. He told me about his daughters, Emily and Anna. Both lived in other cities. They had their own families, busy lives. They called him every week, visited him on important dates. They had a distant but respectful relationship. Nothing like what I had with Michael. Nothing filled with that quiet resentment. Edward had been a widower for 3 years. His wife, Yvonne, had been the love of his life. 48 years together. He showed me a photo he carried in his wallet. A woman with a wide smile and gentle eyes. It was hard when she left, he said in a soft voice. The first few months, I didn't know how to go on. How to get up each day knowing she wouldn't be there. But slowly, I started finding reasons. Small ones. A beautiful sunrise, a good cup of coffee, a book that hooked me, and those small reasons started to become something bigger. I understood exactly what he was saying. Because that's exactly what I had been trying to do for 5 years. Find reasons to keep going. But mine had always revolved around Michael, waiting for his call, preparing for his visits that never came, living for someone who clearly wasn't living for me. Edward was different. He treated me as if my company mattered, as if my words had weight. When I spoke, he truly listened. He didn't look at his phone, he didn't look away. He gave me his full attention, and that was something I had forgotten how it felt. The second day, we walked along a path that bordered the coast. The path was surrounded by tropical vegetation. Red and yellow flowers I didn't recognize. Birds singing. The smell of the sea mixed with damp earth. Edward walked beside me. Sometimes he took my hand to help me when the terrain was uneven. And he didn't let go right away. He just left his hand there, warm, firm, an anchor. We reached a viewpoint. From there, you could see the whole town. The colorful houses, the curved beach with its white sand, the palm trees swaying in the breeze. It was beautiful. A kind of beauty that makes you forget, for a moment, all the ugliness in the world. You know what I like most about this place? Edward said, looking at the horizon. That here, nobody knows who I am. Nobody knows my story. I can be whoever I want to be, without the labels, without the expectations. Just Edward. A man enjoying the sea. I understood perfectly. I felt the same way. Here, nobody knew I was the discarded mother, the lonely widow, the invisible woman. Here, I was simply Helen, a 70-year-old woman who was rediscovering herself. That night, Edward invited me to dinner. At a small restaurant away from the tourist area, the kind of place where locals go. Homemade food, generous portions, reasonable prices. We ordered shrimp with coconut rice. We shared a bottle of white wine, and we talked until the restaurant closed. He told me about his youth, about when he worked his first job, earning barely $70 a month, about how he met Yvonne at a town party, about how he had to convince her father he was a good man, despite being poor, about the struggles, the sacrifices, the joys. A whole life told in fragments over dinner. I told him things I had never told anyone. How I sometimes woke up in the middle of the night crying for Arthur. How there were days when I spoke to no one, not a single word, where my voice stayed hidden because there was no one who needed to hear it. How I had become an expert at pretending I was fine when inside I was falling apart. Edward didn't offer me solutions. He didn't tell me everything would be okay. He didn't minimize my pain. He just said, "You have been very strong, Helen. Stronger than you should have had to be. And it's okay if you want to rest from that strength now." Those words broke me in a beautiful way, because no one had ever given me permission to be weak. I always had to be the strong one, the one who endures, the one who keeps going, no matter what. But Edward was telling me I could put down that weight, even if it was just for a few days. We walked back to the hotel, arm in arm. The streets were lit with Christmas lights. Music played from the bars, people laughing, celebrating. New Year's Eve was close. Edward stopped in front of the hotel entrance. "Helen, I want to ask you something. Tomorrow is the 31st. The hotel is hosting a special dinner. Would you do me the honor of accompanying me?" My first reaction was to think of Michael, of how he would feel if he knew I was here with another man. But then I remembered that Michael had chosen not to be with me. He had chosen his wife's comfort over his mother's love. Why did I have to keep living based on his feelings when he clearly didn't live based on mine? "I would love to accompany you," I replied. Edward smiled, that smile that lit up his eyes behind his glasses. "Perfect. I'll pick you up at 8 o'clock then, and Helen, wear that pretty dress you mentioned, the one your husband gave you. I know he would be happy to see you wearing it." I went up to my room with my heart beating fast. I took the wine-colored dress out of the closet. I laid it on the bed. I looked at it for a long time. Arthur bought it for me at an elegant shop downtown. He spent money we didn't have because he said I deserved something beautiful, that I was beautiful and the world needed to see it. I only wore it once, on our anniversary. Arthur couldn't stop looking at me all night. We danced, we ate, we laughed like young lovers. It was one of the last perfect nights before old age and illness began to take their toll. Now I was going to wear it again, not to hide from the world, not to sit in my house waiting for someone to notice me, but to go out, to live, to celebrate that I was still here, that I still had things to give, that I still deserved to be happy. That night, before sleeping, I finally opened Michael's messages. There were 32. The first ones were confused. "Mom, where are you? Answer. We need to know you're okay." Then they turned annoyed. "This is ridiculous. Stop the drama." Finally, they became almost desperate. "Please, Mom, at least tell us where you are. We're worried." Worried. Now they were worried. Not when they left me alone every Christmas. Not when they canceled visits. Not when they told me I didn't fit in. Only now that I had done something unexpected. Only now that I was no longer predictable. I wrote a simple message. "I'm fine. Enjoying my vacation. See you when I get back." The reply came immediately. "Vacation? Where? With whom?" I didn't answer. I turned off the phone. Tomorrow was the 31st. Tomorrow a new year began. And I was going to start it by living. Not explaining, not justifying, just living. On the 31st, I woke up with butterflies in my stomach. I hadn't felt that excitement in years, that anticipation of something good to come. I showered. I did my hair. I put on makeup carefully. Eyeliner, coral lipstick, mascara. Not much, just enough to highlight what time had faded. I put on the dress. It was a little looser than before. I had lost weight in these years of loneliness, but it still looked good, elegant, dignified. I looked at myself in the mirror, and for the first time in a long time, I liked what I saw. Not an old, discarded woman, but a woman who had lived, who had loved, who had suffered, and who was deciding to live again. Edward knocked on my door at exactly 8 o'clock. When I opened it, he just stood there in silence for a moment. Then he smiled. "You look beautiful, Helen. Absolutely beautiful." The New Year's Eve dinner was held in the hotel garden. They had set up long tables decorated with white tablecloths and centerpieces of tropical flowers. Lights were strung from the trees, creating a magical atmosphere. There was live music, a band playing classic love songs and romantic ballads from our era. The air smelled of jasmine and the sea. Edward led me to our table. He pulled out my chair like a true gentleman. We were seated with 2 other older couples. A couple from Argentina who had been married for 52 years, and a couple from Colombia celebrating their 40th anniversary. We all talked animately, sharing stories, laughing. It was warm, genuine, the kind of human connection I had forgotten existed. The dinner was delicious. It started with a mango and shrimp salad, then a whole baked fish with roasted vegetables. For dessert, they served a coconut cake with vanilla ice cream. Edward and I shared a bottle of sparkling wine. We toasted to life, to second chances, to finding each other after so many years. Between courses, the band played. Edward held out his hand to me. "Shall we dance?" I hesitated. It had been so many years since I had danced. Probably not since Michael's wedding, but he insisted with that smile that was already becoming familiar. "Come on, Helen. Life is too short to sit it out." We went to the small dance floor. He put his hand on my waist. I put mine on his shoulder, and we began to move to the rhythm of a slow ballad. At first, I was tense, aware of every movement, but gradually I relaxed. I let myself go. Edward danced well, confidently but not showy. He guided me gently, and I followed. I closed my eyes for a moment. I felt the music, the movement, the warmth of his hand on my back, and I felt alive. After years of barely existing, of being a shadow in my own life, I finally felt alive again. When the song ended, he didn't let go right away. He just stood there, looking at me. "Helen, thank you for being here tonight, for sharing this with me. You don't know how much it means." "I'm the one who should be thanking you," I replied, "for reminding me that I can still feel joy." We went back to the table. The night continued with conversation and laughter. At 11 o'clock, they began the countdown to midnight. They brought champagne glasses for everyone. People gathered around the garden. Couples, families, friends, everyone waiting for that moment when one year ends and another begins. I took out my phone. Not to call Michael, but to take pictures. I wanted to capture this moment, this new version of me. I took a picture of the illuminated garden, of the table with the sparkling glasses, and then Edward came over. "May I?" He took the phone. "Let me take a picture of you, so you remember this night." I posed shyly, smiling, in my wine-colored dress, with the lights twinkling behind me, with an expression on my face I hadn't seen in years. Happiness. Then I asked him to take one of us together. He put his arm around my shoulders. We smiled at the camera. And in that photo, you could see something beautiful. Two older people who had lost a lot, but who were choosing to move forward. Together, even if just for a few days. 10, 9, 8, the countdown began. Everyone shouting the numbers, the excitement building. 7, 6, 5. Edward took my hand. 4, 3, 2, 1. Happy New Year. Fireworks exploded in the sky, colorful lights illuminating the night. People hugged. They kissed. They celebrated. Edward hugged me. A long, warm hug. "Happy New Year, Helen. May this be the year you get back everything you deserve." I felt tears in my eyes. But they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of gratitude, of relief, of hope. Because I was starting a new year not as a discarded woman waiting for crumbs, but as a woman who was reclaiming her life. After midnight, the party continued, but I was tired. A 70-year-old body has its limits. Edward walked me to my room. We said goodnight at the door. "Thank you for everything," I said, "for making this night unforgettable." "The pleasure was all mine," he replied. He kissed my cheek gently. "Get some rest. We'll have breakfast tomorrow, and you can tell me what plans you have for this new year." I went into my room. I took off the dress carefully. I hung it up again, feeling it had served its purpose. I put on my nightgown. I sat on the bed, and then I turned on my phone. 83 messages, 60 from Michael, 23 from Claire, missed calls I didn't even count. I opened Michael's first. They started out worried. "Mom, please answer. Tell us where you are." Then they became annoyed. "This is crazy. Stop the drama. Don't be childish." And the last ones were almost begging. "Mom, we need to talk. Please. This isn't right." Claire's were more aggressive. "Helen, this is unacceptable. Michael is worried sick because of you. You need to respond." Then, "Where are you spending your money? I hope you're not doing anything foolish." And finally, If you're with someone, you have to tell us who it is. We have a right to know. A right to know. They, who had excluded me, who had told me I didn't fit in, now they were claiming a right over my life, over my decisions, over my happiness. I decided to do something I had never done, something that was probably reckless, but I didn't care. I opened my social media app, the one Michael had helped me create years ago that I barely used because I had nothing interesting to share. I uploaded the photo Edward had taken of me smiling, beautiful in my dress, the lights shining, the happiness evident on my face. Then I uploaded the photo of the two of us, Edward and me, arm in arm, smiling, with a simple caption, "Happy New Year from Paradise." Life is too short not to live it fully. I posted the photos. I turned off the phone, and I fell asleep with a smile on my lips, knowing there would be consequences tomorrow, knowing Michael and Claire would see those photos, knowing they would have questions, a lot of questions. But I didn't care. For the first time in years, I was living for me, not for them, not for their expectations, not for their convenience. For me, I woke up late on January 1st. The sun was already high. My phone was still off. I was in no hurry to turn it on. I knew what I would find. I showered. I dressed in comfortable clothes. I went down to breakfast. Edward was already there, waiting for me. "Good morning. How did the most beautiful woman at last night's party wake up?" I laughed. With compliments like that, anyone would wake up well. We had a quiet breakfast. Then we walked on the beach, the first day of the new year, the fresh air, the sound of the waves. Edward told me his daughters had called him at midnight, that they'd had a good conversation, that he felt at peace with his life. "I still haven't turned on my phone," I confessed. "Are you afraid of what you'll find?" "A little. I know my son will be upset, probably furious. But I needed to do this. I needed to prove to myself that I can still make decisions, that my life didn't end when Arthur died or when Michael discarded me." Edward stopped. He took my hands. "Helen, listen to me. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Your life is yours. Your decisions are yours. And anyone who truly loves you should be celebrating that you're living, not criticizing you for it." He was right. I knew it. But years of conditioning don't erase easily. Years of putting others first, of sacrificing my needs for theirs. It wasn't easy to break that pattern, but I was trying. And that was something. We returned to the hotel around noon. I said goodbye to Edward. I needed to face this alone. I went up to my room. I sat on the bed. I took a deep breath, and I turned on the phone. The phone exploded with notifications, messages, calls, comments on my photos. I opened the comments first. There were some from people I barely knew, old friends from the neighborhood, neighbors, all saying nice things. "You look beautiful, Helen. So happy to see you so happy. You deserve it." But then there were the direct messages, from Michael, from Claire, and they were exactly what I expected. The first message from Michael said, "Mom, who is that man? Where are you? Call me now." Claire's was worse. "Helen, this is embarrassing. At your age, posting pictures with strangers. What will people say? Delete those photos immediately." I read all the messages calmly. 83 in total. All demanding explanations. All scandalized that I dared to live my life without consulting them. All assuming they had the right to control me, to judge me, to tell me what I could and couldn't do. I took a deep breath. I dialed Michael's number. He answered on the first ring. "Mom, where on earth are you? We've been calling you for days. Who is that man in your pictures?" "Hello, Michael. Happy New Year to you, too." "Mom, this isn't the time for sarcasm. Answer me. Where are you and who are you with?" "I'm on the coast. In a hotel. Having a much-needed vacation. And the man in the photos is Edward. An old friend from high school I ran into here by chance." "An old friend? Mom, you can't be running around with strange men. What will people think?" I felt that heat rising in my chest. Anger. Frustration. Years of staying silent that I no longer wanted to keep. What will people think? Really, Michael? That's your concern? Not how I feel? Not if I'm happy? Not if I'm finally living after 5 years of barely existing? Mom, you're exaggerating. We haven't abandoned you, haven't you? Tell me, Michael, when was the last time you invited me to something without me having to ask? When was the last time you stopped by just because you wanted to see me and not because you needed something from me? Silence on the other end. A silence that said everything. Exactly. You can't answer, because the truth is, you excluded me. You told me I don't fit in, that I embarrass you, that it was better for me to stay alone in my house while you celebrated. And you know what? You were right. It is better for me to be alone, but not locked in my house waiting for you to give me crumbs of attention, but out living my own life. Mom, we didn't mean to hurt you, but you did. And I allowed it for a long time. But not anymore. I'm not going to wait around to be included anymore. I'm not going to beg for love from people who clearly don't value me. I heard voices in the background. Claire talking to Michael. Then she took the phone. Helen, listen to me. Michael is very upset because of you. This is completely inappropriate. You need to come home right now and stop making a fool of yourself. Something in me broke. But this time, it was liberating. Claire, for 8 years, I have tried to be the mother-in-law you want, the one who doesn't meddle, the one who accepts everything without complaining, the one who disappears when it's not convenient. But that's over. I am not coming home early. I am going to enjoy every single day I paid for on this vacation. And when I get back, things are going to be different. Different how? Different in that I will no longer be available every time you need something. I will no longer accept being treated like an obligation. And I will definitely no longer tolerate you speaking to me as if I were a child who needs permission to live. I am 70 years old. I have lived more life than both of you combined, and I deserve respect. Helen, you're being ridiculous. No, I'm finally being honest. You excluded me. You decided I wasn't good enough for your perfect New Year's, so I decided to make my own. And it was wonderful. Better than any dinner with you ever could have been. I hung up. My hands were trembling. My heart was pounding. But I felt incredibly free. As if I had finally dropped a weight I had been carrying for years. The phone rang immediately. Michael again. I didn't answer. He called 5 more times. I didn't answer those either. Finally, a text came through. Mom, we need to talk when you get back. This can't be left like this. I replied. You're right. It can't be left like this. When I get back, we are going to set clear boundaries. I'll see you in a few days. I spent my last 2 days on the coast with Edward. We walked, we talked, we ate ice cream, sitting on the beach, watching the sunset. He told me about his life. I told him about mine. We weren't a couple. We were 2 people who had found each other at just the right time, who had reminded each other that life doesn't end when you get old, that there is still beauty, still connection, still reasons to get up every morning. The day I returned home, Edward took me to the airport. We hugged for a long time. Thank you, Helen, for these days, for reminding me I can still feel joy. Thank you, Edward, for seeing me, for valuing me, for treating me like I matter. This doesn't have to be goodbye, he said. We can keep in touch, visit each other. Who knows what could happen? I liked that idea, that this wasn't an ending, but a beginning. When I got home, Michael was waiting for me, sitting on my front steps. He stood up when he saw me. He looked tired, worried, different. Mom, we need to talk. I know. But first, let me get inside. And help me with my bag. We went in. I made coffee. We sat in the living room where, weeks ago, Claire had told me I wasn't welcome. Michael spoke first. Mom, I am so sorry for how we treated you. You're right. We excluded you. We made you feel like you didn't matter, and that was wrong. I looked at my son, the man I had raised, and I finally saw some genuine remorse in his eyes. I appreciate your apology, Michael, but I need you to understand something. Things have to change. I'm not going to be the mother who just accepts everything anymore. If I'm invited to something, I want to be truly welcome, not an obligation. And if you don't want me there, I'd rather you be honest. Because I have a life, too, and I'm going to live it. With or without you. I understand, Mom. And I want you to know we do want you in our lives. We really do. I let things slide. I let Claire make decisions I should have questioned. And Claire? Does she understand? Michael hesitated. She's processing it. But she's going to have to accept it. Because you're my mother. And that's not going to change. We talked for hours. Rebuilding. Setting boundaries. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary, and for the first time in years, I felt like my son was really listening to me. My relationship with Michael slowly improved after that. Claire and I never became close, but she learned to respect me, or at least to pretend she did, and that was enough. Edward and I kept in touch. We visited each other every 2 months. Sometimes he came to my city, sometimes I went to his. We weren't a couple in the traditional sense. We were companions, 2 souls who had found each other at the perfect moment to remind one another that life goes on, that love goes on, that happiness is possible, even after so much pain. And I learned the most important lesson of my life, that it's never too late to reclaim your dignity, to set boundaries, to choose to live, instead of just existing. I was 70 years old when I finally learned to put myself first, and those were the freest years of my entire life.